So we're heading to Crown Street Stables Cafe in Flemington, where they offer this incredible program giving people with a disability opportunity to have real job experience. So I'm excited to get in there and have a chat to them.
We come in every Tuesday weekly, and we get the opportunity to interact with the cafe staff, with the trainee program, the people in it, and my clients are able to order for themselves and have opportunities here that they don't really have in other cafes or other venues. They're able to look at them and go, I can get there. And some of my clients have said that to me before. They've said, you know, I can work here, like I can do that. I can work somewhere else that they're filled that they prefer to do, you know, and that's really special because they see someone that they can relate to.
After chatting to Beck, it's really clear to me how important this program is for people with a disability. And I've just learned that one of the graduates from this program now works at Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. I'm going to head down and have a chat to them.
I think the biggest thing is giving someone a chance. To see giving Gemma an opportunity to come aboard as an employee. You know, it's all about giving a chance. So the program did give her those skills there. The most satisfying thing as a team here, that in putting Gemma on, was knowing that the number one thing she wanted to do was work in a health and leisure facility. So to be able to give her her dream job has been very satisfying here as well, and just very happy to have her aboard on the team. So.
Hi, I'm Gemma Berry and I work at Ascot Vale Leisure Centre. I'm in charge of the customer service, and so I'm helping the gym, taking a class for the oldie over 50 years old. My favourite part of the traineeship was meeting people and meeting customers. And I like to meet lots of people, and it was very interesting because I got to learn lots of stuff. It helped with my confidence, and I'm better talking now than I was before. If you're thinking about doing the traineeship, you should do it because it gives you confidence, and when you move out, you can cook for yourself and all that.
I would love to see more places like Ascot Vale Leisure Centre giving people with a disability a chance. Gemma is the perfect example of why we as a community should support businesses like Crown Street Stables Cafe. Something as simple as a piece of cake and a coffee could really make an impact.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Smoking big cigars. I hope you're ready for what's coming now. I'm the one, I'm the lady that will bring you down. There's a joint on the corner where the big boys play, where the whiskey's running like the rivers, but they all never come for the booze and bass. I'm the one, I'm the lady that'll rock this place. That'll rock this place. That'll rock this place. Rock this place. Rock this place.
something fresh, new, young talent, doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Ordinary Meeting of Council for the 12th of February 2019, which is now open. A warm welcome to members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight at the Civic Centre, as well as those watching from home on the internet. Thank you very much for joining us. As well as being live streamed, the recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones please be switched to silent mode during the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, spirits, ancestors, community members past and present. I'd also like to extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. Councillors, there is one apology for tonight's meeting, and that's from Councillor Serace. So can I have a motion that Councillor Serace's apology please be accepted? Councillor Gauci-Marici, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Byrne, thank you. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the ordinary meeting of Council held on Tuesday the 29th of January 2019 be confirmed? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Otherwise, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? No, thank you. And I do not believe that we have any presentations this evening, nor any petitions and joint letters. I shall now ask our CEO, Brian Lancaster, whether we have received any public questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no questions tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. We do not have any special committees tonight, reports from special committees, so that brings us to our very first item on tonight's agenda, which relates to a planning application at 325 Ascot Vale Road, Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation with the addition of 4 new conditions, being 1C, D, E and F, and then the renumbering of the rest of 1, please. So those new conditions are 1C, the deletion of any structures protruding above the 26 metre mandatory height limit, excluding rooftop services exempt by Clause 4.4 of Schedule 1 to Clause 3708 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. D, any modifications to comply with the requirements of Clause 58032, Communal Open Space of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme as a result of Condition 1C. E, a revised design for the residential and retail frontages at ground level to improve visual interest and their presentation to the public realm. And F, landscaping provided to comply with Standard D10 of Clause 58035, landscaping of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions regarding this agenda item? No? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. This is a proposal for an 8-storey building on what is now pretty much a vacant lot on Ascot Vale Road. On the other side is a 12-storey building, and then behind it sits the tax office, and that's at 7 storeys, and then we've got the church on the corner. What we have here is a proposal to have a retail element down at the ground floor and then 49 dwellings sitting above that. There is a proposal for a small number of 1-bedroom apartments, but most of them are 2-bedroom apartments, so it's very interesting as we watch the market forces shift the dwelling composition. So on balance, I'm satisfied that this has a level of compliance, which means it should be supported, but for me there's the addition of the 4 conditions, which I think are really quite important in this instance. With the access point off Ascot Vale Road, I think we would all acknowledge that that's probably a suboptimal outcome, and it's the case with the building next door too, but the reality is just the limitations with the site mean that that is how the access will need to occur. I think the concern with that is just what it does to the streetscape too, and the traffic movements in and out of Ascot Vale Road. With the height itself, obviously there's a condition in relation to that which I'll speak about in a moment. I would note that the report indicates that there was a previous 8-storey approval some time ago, and then that was extended a number of times, and then that has lapsed, so this is what we're seeing again. If you move the rooftop terrace, and the report goes into a bit of detail about this issue of mandatory heights and whether the rooftop terrace should be included or removed. But I think in this instance, we've probably paid the price in a sense as a council for not having fought quite strongly for our preferred heights and for approving developments in excess of the preferred heights. And so, given this is a mandatory height, I think we need to really read that strictly and enforce that strictly. So in that case, I think it is reasonable to remove the rooftop terrace and the consequential amendments to the design that will need to occur as a result of that. I think the redesign at the street level to try and make it a bit more visually appealing than what is proposed, again, is an important one, because we don't want this section of Ascot Vale Road to be a wasteland. There's a lot of movement around there in many ways, and we want it to really be interesting and beautiful, and I don't think the design quite gets there at the moment. With landscaping, it's a really interesting one, but I think we really need to start taking a much stricter view of the landscaping requirements, particularly in our activity centres and our commercial zones. I think probably the prevailing view has been that, you expect much higher density, that massive concrete is just what we expect in our activity centres. But as we all know, at the MV 2040 level, we have one of our themes being green, and it is essential that we also make sure that, to the extent we can, that our activity centres and the buildings within them are green and have good landscaping too. So I know that might mean that our developers who are in this municipality doing developments need to think about their design a bit more differently, but I think it is entirely appropriate, and I think that it's something that we as a council really need to be strictly enforcing, so that we have that benefit of both the people who are living in the buildings, but also to that broader benefit to the community of the greenery and the landscaping. I did have some concerns, given other experiences we've had, about the waste and whether what's proposed will work, but have been advised by officers that it will, which is good. Concerns about overlooking are addressed through conditions in the proposed motion, and the stepped-in nature of the building will mitigate, won't remove totally, amenity impacts on the building adjacent to it. But we know, again, having been through this at VCAT numerous times, how they view the amenity expectations of people living in activity centres, so we've got to be mindful about that. And I think to the extent that it has been stepped in and we've got the conditions about overlooking and confirmed about the overshadowing, that on balance this has a level of compliance which means that it's an application that deserves support with the additional conditions included.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Nation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to support the motion with the extra conditions as put forward by Councillor Marshall, and agree that it's a reasonable development when you consider the context of where it's located along Ascot Vale Road, and that precinct 3, the young mixed-use precinct. Completely concur with the condition regarding the height. It's mandatory. It's important that we make sure heights are adhered to, and it works relatively well when you look at Mondo stepping down to Mopo being 17 to 12 to 8, noting there are a few other developments with approvals in that precinct that sit around that height. The commercial frontages is a really good point and a really good addition, because there's definitely been lost opportunities with what has been developed along there. You think of Mondo, which is 17 stories, and while there is an easement or a carriageway that does partially cut across that site, it is set back and doesn't have that retail frontage. And then that Mopo, which is next to it, or the 12-storey development, again, you drive past it, it's got the vehicle access, and I don't know if it's service boards or where that mock graffiti is. It really doesn't activate the streetscape. So I think that that commercial element here is important, ultimately because a lot of those sites, potentially not the church, but even further up to the corner of Gladstone Street, will ultimately be developed. So on balance, I think this is a reasonable application. I wouldn't think there'd be much to argue at VCAT that would otherwise see this refused, and therefore I'm happy to support Councillor Marshall's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? 325. Nobody else? Okay. I shall put that to the vote. All those... Yes, Councillor Cusack.
I'd like to declare that I have no conflict of interest for any of the work that we're doing tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. I shall make a note of that. Thank you. I shall put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. The next report relates to a planning application at 11 Ian Crescent, Airport West. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to put up an alternative, thank you.
Thank you. If you could please read that out, that would be great.
That Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit in relation to planning permit number MV-560-2018 for the construction of 10 dwellings at 11 Ian Crescent, Airport West, Lot 1 on PS 083646 in accordance with the following grounds of refusal. 1. The proposal represents an overdevelopment of the land. 2. The proposal will cause adverse traffic impacts on the surrounding area which will be substantial and unreasonable, and also cause traffic conflicts in the driveway and impact on passing traffic as a result of the steep slope and narrow entrance, making it unsafe, contrary to the decision guidelines of Clause 52.06-9 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. 3. The proposal fails to satisfy Clause 55.03-10 parking location of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. And 4. The proposal fails to meet the objectives and strategies contained within Clause 21.06-4 objectives and strategies urban design of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and would result in visual bulk presenting to adjoining properties.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Does any councillor have any questions regarding this motion? Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure all of the councillors around this table would be quite familiar with Ian Crescent now, as it's not the first time 11 Ian Crescent has come into this chamber. Just a brief history. The initial application for Ian Crescent was lodged in August 2016 for 12 dwellings. It was then refused by Council, and then in January 2018 it was knocked back by VCAT. The applicants have then put in another application, and that's what we have before us tonight. The reason why VCAT knocked back the initial application, basically there was a few dot points, but unacceptable neighbourhood character and unacceptable impact on adjoining properties. So in terms of what's before us tonight, it's Ian Crescent, 2,559 square metres, 10 dwellings, which is 2 2-bedrooms, 7 3-bedrooms and 1 4-bedder, car parking, 19 residential and 2 visitor spaces, permeability of 36.7%, garden area of 39.8%. I will start off with the positives of this application. I do appreciate that the applicant has made changes to the front setback, which is now compliant, the pitches of the roofs, and the reduction in height of some of the dwellings, which previously were non-compliant. However, I still have, as you can see by me putting up a refusal today, significant issues with this application that no matter which way I look at it, just couldn't condition it enough to make it appropriate and add something to the surrounding area. So first of all, I'd like to start off with the parking location. I have concerns with the fact that the way that the dwellings are numbered, between dwelling 2 and 3, there is a gap for dwelling 9 to park. I feel as though when you look at the plans, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's pretty much been the only way that the applicant has been able to put the required car parking in, which leads on to the next point, which is the urban design front. This was one of the points that was brought up in VCAT for the initial application, and I do obviously respect that it is a new application. However, there were significant issues for the neighbouring property at 13 Ian Crescent, and I don't believe that this application has fixed that anywhere near enough. The visual impact is unacceptable from 13 Ian Crescent. If I was living at 13 Ian Crescent, if you can imagine the way the crescent forms and the way this development goes all the way down the one side, 13 Ian Crescent's private, secluded, open space was just looking at effectively just a concrete wall. So to fix that, there is a gap, basically the size of a car spot, to break it up. But it's still not enough. It's something that VCAT was said last time wasn't good enough, and it still isn't good enough. If I was living in that property, I think that it really does significantly affect them, their secluded private open space. In terms of overdevelopment, normally you would say that this amount of dwellings, 10 dwellings on over 2,000 square metres, wouldn't represent an overdevelopment. However, I have put this in purely because the way that the shape of Ian Crescent is and the slope, and clearly by the way that they've tried to manoeuvre around 10 dwellings on this piece of land, it just doesn't work. It is such a narrow frontage and such a slope which goes down. By the time you put in the driveways, by the time you keep the existing trees, which I'm really glad that they're doing, it just doesn't work on this block of land. So that's why the overdevelopment is in. And traffic, I can virtually repeat what I said last time in terms of the traffic on the bend of Ian Crescent. For those that aren't familiar with it, it is a high traffic area, especially between those school hours with St Christopher's and people coming through, dropping off kids, especially kids, and with such a narrow frontage, the cars going in and out, including a garbage truck, because that's how the garbage is going to have to be collected. It's just the traffic impacts for the street are unacceptable, especially when one car's coming out whilst another car wants to go in at school time. It'll back up all the traffic all around the Crescent, and I just don't believe that that's safe, and that's why I've put in the traffic impacts as one of the issues as well. And I'm mindful of the time, and so that's why I've put up the refusal, and happy to hear other councillors' thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Byrne was speaking, I was just ticking off everything, so she left very little for me to say about this application, but I can see the positives and I can see the negatives as well. Yes, it is a good sized block of land. Yes, it is a good sized block of land, but I think when this subdivision originally happened, our forefathers never thought of putting 11 units on this block, or 12 units, or 10, whatever. It was actually done this way when it was subdivided originally, because it was an odd shape. It was a very narrow frontage, and that's the reason why they gave it a bit more generous land to allow for a single dwelling, maybe two, maybe three. But what my biggest concern with this block is 10 units, they're 3 bedrooms, some are 4 bedrooms, and there's only 2 visitor car parks in that whole complex. I think there could have been a bit more generous for visitor car parking, knowing that there's very little parking and very little frontage on this property. I think if there was more parking spots, this might have been a more palatable application for council to look at.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Only very, very briefly, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate the comments from the ward councillors, Councillor Sypek and Councillor Byrne. It is a huge block of land. This is where I'm a bit vexed with this development. If this is 2,600 metres in Buckley Ward or even Moonong, not that there's many that big down there, but but certainly it would be an acceptable development by its size, and this is the concern. Do we apply different measures of what we consider to be bulk for different parts of the municipality? And that's the vexed question that I would put. It's not to deny what you've suggested, Councillor Byrne or Councillor Sypek, in terms of the impact traffic-wise, but just I don't know whether bulk is a relevant planning issue in this case. That's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Byrne, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would. So I suppose I'm happy to thank you for your comments, Councillor Sypek, Councillor Lawrence. Rosehill Ward isn't Buckley Ward or Moonong Ward. Our level of public transport is significantly less, and everyone basically needs cars at this stage. The public transport just isn't good enough, especially around here. And it is one thing that I possibly disagree with Councillor Sypek on in terms of having more visitor car parks on this space. I would prefer it to be significantly less dwellings and hence less cars, because as soon as you put more visitor car parks in, of course, we're just encouraging more and more cars going into this crescent effectively. So I think that there is an issue and there isn't enough car parking, but instead of more car parking, less dwellings. In terms of your comments, Councillor Lawrence, in terms of the bulk, by reading the VCAT report from last time, that was actually a ground that was refused at VCAT. We didn't actually have on our initial alternative the neighbourhood character and the significant issues from 13 Ian Crescent. That was something that the VCAT member came out and clearly said, and it's in the appendices, and anyone who wants to have a read can. I unfortunately don't have it up on my screen at the moment as I've got the agenda up, but it says that the visual impact was just so unacceptable for number 13, and it still is unacceptable. So yes, it might be one of the things that might fit into neighbourhood character in Moonong or Buckley, but it definitely doesn't in Airport West, and if VCAT says that, I'm going with that as well. So I hope that councillors see merit in this refusal, and hopefully that's the end of Ian Crescent for this type of development. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Audit Committee Chairman's Report for 2017 to 18. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek, thank you. What would you like to move, Councillor Sypek?
We move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack? Thank you. Are there any questions, councillors, regarding this agenda item? No. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think it's very self-explanatory that it's the chairman's report, and I'm happy to take it as read.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would you like to speak?
Very briefly, Mayor, the audit report is from the chair is pretty comprehensive, and you can see some of the key issues that were raised in that by the chair that were considered by the audit committee during the course of 2017 and 18. And some of those have some very long-reaching implications for our community, in particular the area around child safety standards and the likes of that. And of course the moves that have been made over the course of the last 12, 18 months, 2 years around our procurement and vendor management have also been significantly discussed within the audit committee. But that's not, because I'm not mentioning them all, doesn't mean I'm leaving any out. they're all important. It is interesting, though, that there is one point that the Audit Committee Chair makes, and that is in respect of there was Council had decided to bring internal audit into the operation of the council, and while that was potentially going to work very, very well, unfortunately the loss of a very key worker in that area destabilised that opportunity. So council has recently gone out and to tender and appointed pitcher partners to operate in that area. However, it also is an indication that the Audit Committee was prepared to entertain the ideas of council as ways to look forward to facilitating and operating effectively and efficiently. And at that stage, there was absolutely nothing wrong with the argument. It only fell over on the basis of the staffing. So I commend the report to you, and hope you agree with the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next report is 10.4, and it is the Financial Performance Report, December 2018. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Lawrence.
I'd like to move a motion in the form of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions regarding the Financial Performance Report? No? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this report explains Council's financial position and their performance over the 6 months, 31st of December 2018. So from July through to December of last year. Look, without being too rigorous in terms of looking at every point that's made, the ones that stood out in the report that I could see was the support for the important Drive Link program, that $45,000 there was a shortfall, and additional funding that council's propped up for that program. Also, there was an increase in revenue of $6.5 million via fees, fines, grants and contributions, which is encouraging. There's been an increase in council's open space development contributions of 1.3 mil. All these things are a healthy situation for council. The outcome for the financial position to the 31st of December, however, is happening in an ever-changing environment within the financial world, and Moonee Valley City Council must be very mindful in the forward estimates, particularly for the 1920 financial year and beyond. I congratulate Mr Hogan, the Financial Manager, on his rigorous report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak? Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Gatchimarichi.
I will just briefly, for those who don't relish in the opportunity to read every single line of our financial report. So a brief summary for those at home. In terms of the surplus at 31 December is 17.8 million compared to a budget of 11.3 million. As Councillor Lawrence mentioned, that's a variance of 6.5 million, mainly due to unbudgeted capital grant funding for East Keilor Leisure Centre of 2.7 million, Riverside of 1.57 and Overland of 410,000. The Capital Works annual forecast of 53.6 million is forecast to be 1.2 million less than the budget due to the timing and completion of projects, and that those incomplete projects will be carried forward to 2019-20, and that as at the 31st of December, Council has 69.4 million in cash and cash equivalents compared to the annual forecast amount of 61.7 million. That favourable $7.7 million forecast is due to unbudgeted capital grant income and the delay in delivery of the capital works program. And just a final, for the key performance indicators, asset renewal is measured at medium risk rating, with the other 6 indicators measured at low risk.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchimurchi. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? Councillor Cusack?
I'll just make a brief comment that we're doing very well right now, but of course this council, as it already has flagged, is entering into a significant capital works program that will have major benefits for many people in our community, but of course there is a cost associated with it, and it's going to take time to get the whole thing looking as rosy as this picture is again into the future. But having said that, we should never be lily-livered about these things or weak. That this sort of work has actually been very much recognised as being needed. I think that the interesting thing that comes to me out of this report is that the amount of capital grants and the fact that we've been able to secure those through our advocacy work and the opportunity of this council to put together solid and decent arguments to funding bodies, in particular the state government and to a degree the federal government, has been really much to the benefit of our community. And so that money that has come in has now realised things like the netball at Riverside makes a difference to getting the East Keilor Leisure Centre up and started, and money that has been sought for a number of other projects. There's some sadness that we hear that the Roads to Recovery program is not going to be funded as much as it will be, could be in the future, but those sorts of things are the ups and downs that we take. This is, as other councillors have said, is a report that reflects the excellent work of our council officers, in particular those in the financial area, who have really strengthened that in the years over the last few years, and given us an opportunity and a way to read and manage our budgets in a much more sensible and an approachable way than has been in the past. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. The next report is 10.5 and it relates to waste collector permits for private waste and recycling collections. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall?
Yes, Mayor. I would like to move that Council 1 requires private waste management companies to hold a valid permit to operate in designated areas of the city, commencing in Western Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, MPAC, or if in breach of a permit, incur a penalty charge for each offence. 2, request the Chief Executive to proceed with development and implementation of an online permit form to be created and placed on Council's website for private waste companies to apply for permits online. 3, allows the Chief Executive Officer to require a valid waste management operating permit in other precincts within the municipality as required. 4, amends the waste management guidelines which are incorporated in the local law and makes any other changes necessary in order to provide enforcement powers and otherwise give effect to the permit system. And 5, receive a report 12 months post-implementation of the permit process, providing an update and review of the effectiveness of the permit process.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack, thank you. Does any councillor have any question regarding this agenda item? No? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. Whenever you introduce a new permit system, you need to ask yourself a few things. Obviously, we need to make sure that we have the power to implement the system, and just officer advice is that that is the case, and there will be some changes as noted above in the particular motion to give effect to the system that's proposed to be implemented. In this instance too, I wanted to be really clear about why we're doing it, and this will have a twofold, I suppose, if you like, effect. And firstly, it will enable us to collect data, which in this instance will be very useful, given the very large number of trucks we currently have circling the municipality collecting waste. And on that front too, I think councillors will all be aware of this, but obviously we do our council collection, and then with some of the larger developments, they have private collections. And we are experiencing large numbers of trucks movements, and that obviously has amenity impacts and it has environmental impacts. And ultimately, I would hope that perhaps out of this what might come is some efficiencies and the ability for council to look at what's happening and to reduce truck movements through perhaps discussions with the various private waste management companies, so that what we do is we do reduce the amenity impacts that go along with the garbage collections. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out, and hopefully we do collect some useful data, and when we have enforcement powers, have an ability to regulate what the trucks are doing.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Councillor Marshall has obviously touched on the rationale for why this is so important, but just like to ask people to think forward a little bit. Imagine Moonee Ponds Activity Centre when the building is finally completed, when all the residents have moved in, and when we're trying to rebuild a Moonee Ponds as a very significant retail centre for the whole of the northwest, not just in the current locale. And when you have over 1,200 truck movements a day during the course of that week, trying to, or near enough to 1,200 truck movements, trying to circulate around a very small area to remove waste, at sometimes dual trucks in virtually next to each other, picking up waste from buildings almost next to each other, and so on like that. It doesn't make much sense. And I, for one, as a resident, would be a bit nonplussed and probably a little bit cranky if this was going to be something that affected my amenity. But I think also as a resident, it's a critical part of how this part of Moonee Valley is actually going. It represents itself to the whole of the Melbourne community, and how it represents itself in that more broadly. And so common sense tells you that collecting data, putting it in place, and finding the right kinds of solutions to this sort of higgledy-piggledy mess, which is a potential, they can be solved. And we've got to give our minds to that now before everybody moves in.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I think this is a good move. I think, as Councillor Cusack's pointed out, the increase in the number of trucks are going to have a threefold effect, as I can see it, both in terms of noise, in terms of the smell that goes with waste, and the discomfort that can cause some people. In fact, most people, I would dare say, and also the impact, the interruption of traffic movement, and that's probably where this has originally stemmed from, I would think. But I think it's a good move, and one that will at least add some semblance of control over how this whole waste issue in a very intense in terms of the number of units that are in the area, that it'll only make things better. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 10.6 and it relates to the proposed disposal of 344 Ascot Vale Road, Moonee Ponds. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to move that Council 1 resolves not to dispose of the property at 344 Ascot Vale Road, Moonee Ponds, and 2, requests that the CEO consider further appropriate uses for the site, including without limitation, use by community groups, use as social and/or emergency housing, including potential development of the site for this purpose, or use as open space, and brings a further report to a future ordinary council meeting as appropriate.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack, thank you. Any councillor have any question regarding this agenda item? Councillor Marshall, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Obviously, council owns this site, and it's a site pretty close actually to the development application that we were talking about at the start of the meeting tonight. The statutory process for selling the site was commenced some time ago, but then the council resolved to put that process on hold. And we've purchased last year a triangular site just a little bit further up the road in near the junction, and so I think officers viewed that as being, I suppose, the site that we should focus greening and making it as open space, and I'm really excited about how that will look and play out. But I think it's premature to look at selling this site, and I think that's the case for a number of reasons. Firstly, we don't actually know yet as councillors what the proposed planning guidelines for the revised ones for the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre will look like. We haven't had the detail of that yet, so I'm mindful about not jumping till we see what that's like. But I also think, given where this land sits, given that this is the part of the municipality that is going to experience the most significant growth, as we know the figure 30%, over an extended period of time, that we should not be selling a site within the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre. And there are a whole range of things that we could potentially use this for. We have community groups always wanting sites. We have a very large number of residents moving in bit by bit, and obviously when we have the redevelopment of the racecourse, even more so, who will need council facilities. And so to sell off a site, as I said, right in this in the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre, when we could potentially have another use for it, is premature. I also think we need to think about other opportunities, the potential for better connectivity with Junction Lane, because we need to keep in mind, again, if we want that good flow, if we want Mount Alexander Road to be as vibrant as it can be, we need to be able to make it accessible for people to move through the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre through into Mount Alexander Road and all of the wonderful restaurants and cafes that are there. And look, it might be too that it could be used for a pocket park at some stage. Again, given we've got so much growth, we need to provide green spaces as much as we can, and even if they are smaller green spaces, smaller well-planned green spaces can be just so enhancing for a community. I suppose too, the other thing for me, we're embarking on the social housing project, which we got some government funding for, and I am incredibly excited. I'm hoping I'm not getting my hopes up with how that might play out. But you think about it, we know if we sold this site, what will happen is it will be developed for apartments. I think we can say that with a fairly high degree of confidence. So if council, when we're undertaking our social housing project, if we end up deciding that this is a site that would be useful to develop social housing and to provide that opportunity for people, I think it's something that we shouldn't rule out, and if we sell the site now, we will. So, as I said, I think there is so much happening in the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre that it just seems a very inopportune time to look at selling a site like this. Let's hold on to it, but in the meantime, let's see if it can be used for a whole range of uses. And we know it's in pretty good shape. We've had officers do that inspection, but let's look at an interim use, and then ultimately, who knows what we might end up using this site for.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Councillor Cusack.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Marshall, for your very wise presentation. Listen, this is not and shouldn't be just about balancing the books. If Council is going to do that, invariably we might find ourselves spending a lot more money down the track to find a resource like this in the centre of Moonee Ponds, when we can, as you say, Councillor Marshall, apply it in many, many different ways. And its opportunities through in its future life might be quite extraordinary. And ultimately, it could be a pocket park. Who knows? But at the end of it all, it might also be a place where community organisations can come together and plan and do things to be the generator of new opportunities and business and so on like that in our municipality. It might be a place where things like the Moonee Ponds traders groups can go to organise their meetings and do things. It might also be an opportunity for maybe a school in the area to run a particular class of some sort for a particular group of students, for instance. But it also, as you say, has opportunities within all of those things that make up the second point of your motion. I think also the critical points that you have made about population growth are extraordinarily important to consider in this. Moonee Ponds is going to have this huge explosion of people in a very short period of time. When people demand something that is by way of a service or an opportunity, we will only have a limited number of things to say to them. Go to the library, or there's a lot of it's quite difficult after that. And so why not take this opportunity to hasten slowly and make some considered decisions based on community demand and how that translates into the policies of this council about greening the area, about making it much more accessible, about making it something that is desirable. My final comment is just where it's located at the T-junction of Gladstone Street. It sort of, in my mind, signifies how we might potentially, as I said before, green up the Moonee Ponds Activity Centre. But that bit of Ascot Vale Road going down to the junction is being taken over by mass development. We just talked about one only a few minutes ago in this meeting. And the implications are that there will be an unrelenting picture of development if we let go of this property right now, rather than making this a permeable, an opportunity for permeability between Mount Road, Ascot Vale Road, and doing things of that order and being somewhat imaginative. And we've talked about things like our landscape of the laneways and using it for arts and so on like that. Yep. And this could easily fit into that sort of scope.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? No? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we do not have any notices of motion tonight. The next item of business is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any items of urgent business? No. Do councillors have anything that they would like to report on in their roles as delegates? No. So that brings us to our next item of business, which is confidential reports, and there are 2 confidential reports this evening. So, councillors, can I have a motion that the meeting be closed to the public under section 89(2)(d) of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider confidential reports? Councillor Gachi-Marici, thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Marshall, thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. This is where we say goodnight to members of the public gallery and those watching the meeting. Thank you for your interest in tonight's meeting, and we shall see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.